Welcome back at 7:44. It is Headline Makers, and we're going through the papers and everything that's out there this morning with the former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and the GBNEWS senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Welcome back to both of you. Claire, can we start with Nigel Farage's prediction right here on GBNEWS last night that actually we could have 10 years of Labour due to how badly he thinks that the Conservatives have ruled and led the country over the last decade?
It was a really interesting piece, and I think he's got a point. As much as it pains me to say it, I don't want to see the Conservatives out of power at all. But when you look at the way everything is going, when you look at the political turmoil that we've had for at least the last 4 years, you can see that it's almost as if the Conservatives are handing it over to Labour. And I think it's always handy to have these things pointed out in no uncertain terms.
But I'll tell you what was interesting. I know what you both think about this, and we'll play the clip for you in a minute so you can make up your own mind. But Richard Tice last week gave a speech saying, well, if you need to vote for us, otherwise there'll be Starmageddon. Nigel's saying, who's the president of the party, saying, well, there's going to be Starmageddon whoever you vote for.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably right. That, I mean, at the moment, it's very hard to see how the Tories can possibly pull back from where they are at the moment. I mean, the polls aren't shifting, whatever Rishi Sunak does. And certainly what Keir Starmer says is that he's got a 10-year plan for the renewal of Britain, which means he needs 2 terms. And remember what happened with Tony Blair, that the Tories were in complete disarray just before the 1997 landslide. He got 3 terms. So you're not just talking about... We could be there, for another 15 years or something.
But there's an awful lot of difference between 1996, 97 and what's happening now. Yes, the Conservative Party was in disarray then, but also Labour were much better, much more organised, looking like a government in waiting, whereas we don't have that at the moment. You need to have an effective opposition if you want them to go into power, and currently we just don't have it. And I think that voters don't necessarily want to vote Conservative. They are really angry, but not enough to go and vote for Labour because it doesn't give them any hope that anything...
But in 5 years, they could grow into the job. Labour could grow into the job.
Well, yes, but, Tony Blair, you got the feeling he was already ready to go, wasn't he, before he got into power? And perhaps that's why we're hearing now, for the first time ever, Sir Keir Starmer saying he wants to kind of emulate Tony Blair, who's, I guess, in many ways since been disgraced, hasn't he?
Oh, well, let's give you this clip then, shall we? So, Leader of Reform, Richard Tice, says, if you want to keep Labour out, vote for Reform. Nigel Farage, who's the honorary president of Reform UK, says this.
But I think Labour have got a decade in power almost written in already. Such is the level of disenchantment at the Conservatives and what they've done. Remember this, in 1974, the Conservative Party lost the election. You would have thought for all the world they were doomed after Ted Heath. But a new political philosophy and a new leader came along in Margaret Thatcher. They were only in opposition for 1 term. The silent majority in this country agree with many of the things, Mark, that you and I agree with. It's part of why GBNEWS is doing as well as it is. I don't know whether the Conservatives are going to be replaced, whether they're going to be changed. What I do know is that Reform is going to play a very important role in realigning the centre-right of British politics to give us a proper choice.
Which is interesting because basically what he's saying is that Reform, aren't going to win anything. Or, they may win some seats. They're not going to make up a government.
They won't win any seats at the moment.
But they're not going to make up... they're certainly not going to make up a government, but they are going to effectively shape the Conservative Party.
That's exactly it. I mean, they will disrupt the Tory party. It may well be that at the general election, some Tory MPs will lose their seats because of Reform, but under the first-past-the-post system, Reform won't get a seat. It's the same that UKIP had the same problem, and they were higher in the poll.
And whereas it's a very odd thing for a president of a party to say, actually, it's the sort of honesty you don't get from anybody else. You've got to be straightforward about it.
You have, and I think that politics has moved now into such a space where people just want honest answers. And whether you agree with him or disagree, Nigel Farage is always one of those who will give quite a robust opinion. I think it's a little bit different for Richard Tice. He's more of that political angle. He wants to get people voted in. So it's sort of two sides of looking at it. But I think that any political party that says reform isn't a threat is wrong.
Yeah.
I do think they are. I think they are a grand disruptor. And it's really going to be up to the public if they can come out and vote or if they prefer their local candidate for whichever party is standing.
Yeah.
Not just Nigel Farage, who's been saying things are worse under the Tories, but also a number of experts talking about water pollution, Nigel. And this is inside The Guardian. They're calling for an independent inquiry into the sewage that we find.
Yes, that's right. And this is the rather snappily titled Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management.
OK.
But basically, they police the sewage that
that's a job.
That's in our rivers. Anyway, what they're saying is that the Tories were meant to actually do all this back in 2010. And what they were meant to create was what are called sponge cities. And the idea of it doesn't sound very sort of edifying, but the idea of a sponge city is that you have plenty of plant cover, you have green zones, ponds, the pavements soak water away. That's the idea of it. And this whole thing was meant to come in 2011. It was then abandoned in 2015. And one of the reason we have so much sewage floating around is because of that. So what the Institute is calling for is an inquiry into this to see if we can actually get back and get those regulations back in place.
It never ceases to amaze me that the Environment Secretary is married to one of the bosses of a big water company in this country, and that isn't considered a conflict of interest, given, you know, how much criticism there is directed at these people, not least in terms of the dividends that they're all paying themselves.
Precisely, and I don't think we need an inquiry to work out that if water companies didn't distribute waste into our waterways, into seas, into ponds, into lakes, then we wouldn't have this problem. And it seems that Ofwat, the regulator, are really toothless on this because those companies know what they're doing, they get away with it, they might get a fine now and again, but realistically, there's no deterrent to them. They need to be dealt with a hell of a lot better, a lot stronger. In fact, take it out of their hands, give it to other water companies. There is no competition.
Nationalise it.
I'm not in favour.
Oh, yes, please.
There we go.
Nationalise.
Right, before we run out of time, Nigel, let's have a look at the Express and car headlights.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's moaning about car headlights.
Well, I moan about them all the time, actually. I find them really difficult. But yes, this is a survey by the RAC, which is saying that 85% of people say it's got the car headlight dazzling has got worse over the last year.
Last year?
And the issue is LED lights as opposed to the old halogen ones, and they're now actually dazzling motorists. And the dangerous part of this is that people are reporting that they can't see up to 6 seconds after being dazzled. And obviously that's hugely dangerous. And as a result of that, 1 in 14 drivers say won't drive at night. I don't like driving at night anymore. I get dazzled by the headlights coming towards me.
That's an... Oh, Lord.
So Claire drives, that's the easiest way of actually doing it.
I hate to say it, but the older you get, the less you like driving at night.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I thought had a lot to do with it, but now I know it's the LED
It's
headlights.
somebody else's fault. The LED headlights have been around for years.
But they have those kind of xenon blue lights are very, very bright. And it's very nice if you're in a car and you're driving and you can see 12, 13 feet in front of you. But if you're going to blind the person that's oncoming, then...
We all need those special sunglasses that my grandpa used to have. That he pulled down, he'd have his normal glasses, and then when it got bad...
The yellow ones.
Oh, went the yellow.
Yeah, there you go.
They are great. They do work.
Lovely. We'll see you a little bit later on, you two.
Thank you
very
both.
much indeed. We've been talking about dog names all morning, so you've been sending yours in with some little pictures. And this is Jip. We wanted a one-syllable name, as my other half has Parkinson's, and it's easy for him to say.
Donna
haven't got a name from that, though. Who sent that in? Sorry about that.
That was. Donna's been in touch. So this is her dog, Milo. He's a Border Terrier, and this was on his 17th birthday.
Wow, done really well. And Claire in Cambridgeshire sent us Bailey. Other end of the spectrum, he is 3.5 months old. Beautiful.
Keep them coming in. We're loving it. In the meantime, here's Alex Deakin with your weather.